How do you think that works? Oh! There's nothing going on around here.
Hey you guys, my name is Gabe Cruz, and we are here today at the Braille House with our very special guest, the Professor.
Hey guys, in the world of skateboarding, I'm known as Professor Schmitt. My real name is Paul Schmitt. I started making skateboards as a teenager. I'm still practicing, you know. And we're gonna go through some of the things I've learned over the years today, and what makes a 7-ply good and right, and what makes a 7-ply wrong.
He's gonna take us to school today. Glo, are you
That's
ready?
That's right, you are going to school.
I'm about to learn something I've never heard of. Oh, I messed up. I'm about to learn something I never knew about.
You'll be learning a whole bunch, I guarantee it. People always get really surprised at what's involved in a skateboard. And there's a lot to it. There's a lot of refinement. People always say like, oh, well, a skateboard should be made out of carbon fiber and high tech and all this kind of stuff, right? In the modern world, they have this image of what that should be. Well, first of all, who wants a $1,000 board? Because you always want a new board tomorrow anyways, right? You got a new board today, you want a new one tomorrow, right? That's just how it goes. But the reality is that in the world of aerospace and everything else, they have these things that they engineer into products called nanotubes. And nanotubes are little tiny tubes microscopically. Technically, a tube is stronger than a solid because it can bend and come back. It can flex and come back. So every time you land a trick, that energy, right? Now, like anything, you go too far, right? Things do break, you know? So a skateboard ends up being made out of 7 plies of hard maple veneer. So we have a little layup here for this little experiment for my Create Escape program. So you can see here we got a long grain, a cross grain, a long grain, cross grain, a long grain, and a long grain. And the thickness of those layers had become engineered over the years. Skateboards started to become 7 plies way back in like 1977, way back, right?
Aussie, we've been at this for about 3 minutes, and I am already mind blown. I have so many questions.
So what happens here is the orientation has changed over time. And it used to be 3 layers across and 4 layers long, and that would have been around a 60-40 strength percentage. And as we got into the 80s, it became a 70-30 strength percentage. And as we got into the early 90s, Chuck Holtz pushed it to 75-25. In the late 90s, I pushed it to 80-20. And that really made a skateboard now have this flex and pop back.
So how do you go about like creating that strength differential? Like just a bunch of experiments? Like how do you test the strength?
Well, the best way to test a skateboard is ride it, right? I've done things with strain gauges and high-tech machines and things, but the reality is a skateboarder, your body tells you more than anything else does, right? You know? So hard maple is our wood of choice we use for skateboards. So check out these 3 pieces of wood, okay? So, right, check that out. Check this one out. Check that one out. Feel the weights.
From what I can feel, this is the most dense one.
Yep.
Heaviest, middle, lightest right here.
Yep. Okay, so you technically got that right. Now we'll see if you can technically get this right. Botanically, you know, Mom and Grandma talk about stuff in the gardens. That's botanically, anything Mother Nature grows, right? So do you know which one of these is a hardwood and which one's a softwood botanically?
To be honest, no, I don't.
But can you form a perception? Do you think that's hard or soft?
I feel like this is the soft one.
You feel that's a softwood, okay? So he thinks this is a softwood.
This is a
Hardwood? Okay, he thinks that's a hardwood. Okay, what do you think that one is?
soft.
You think this is soft?
No, that's hard. That's hard.
Okay, come on, we gotta be a little bit, you know. Okay, so hard maple, you know, we use it for skateboards. That's why they bash into the curb all day long, you know. What happens when you bash your pine into a curb? What about your balsa wood? Oh. It was light, but it wasn't strong, right? But you know, if you want a nice cabinet for your furniture, for your kitchen, you can just build it out of pine, right? You know, or fir or something like that. Yeah. But maple, it's tough. This is the stuff right here. This is the hard maple trees. They grow in the Great Lakes region of North America. And for those that live in that part of the world, they know that it gets really cold in the winter, right? And the trees lose their leaves in the winter. So Mother Nature has this whole cycle. Well, she'll take the tree and the spring comes along and she'll go like, hey, it's warm out now, let's grow. And the leaves grow out, right? What are you doing to that maple? That's just a single piece. So anyways, as the trees grow, right, in the spring, the nutrients are coming through the tubes up and down, okay? Right underneath the bark, there's a fresh layer each year. So you see a tree has rings, right? And each year, it gets a fresh set of rings. And what happens is the nutrients are going from the soil up and from the sunlight down. How do you think that water gets from the ground to the top of that tree 100 feet up? Any idea?
That's all you, Glo?
You got that handled?
It absorbs it.
Yeah, you know how hard it is to get up, right? How does the water get up there? where?
Through the roots?
Through the roots? It comes from the roots.
Rainfall absorbed from leaves.
Leaves. He said leaves, okay? They're like collectors. They're going like the sun bakes the leaf's like, I'm dry, I need some moisture.
Oh,
And
what?
it sucks to the straws up the tree.
That's amazing.
Right? And then what happens to a hard maple tree, because they only grow in that region, it freezes in the winter. What happens to water when you freeze it? It expands, right? It goes like this. So it just took the tube and made the tube denser. It densified the wood and made it tougher and more durable. So then what happens is the leaves come off the tree, you know, in that point. It's now sitting there with frozen water in it all winter long. The spring comes along and the thaw happens. Now what happens is that tree goes like in a 2-week period usually, depending on temperatures, it will thaw out and it will just bleed out syrup. Now the farmers there, they'll go put a tap in the side of the tree and a bucket. They'll get a 5-gallon bucket or they'll connect it to hoses and tubes to a boil house if they're a production place, and they'll get maple syrup. Takes about 40 gallons of sap out of a tree to get 1 gallon of maple syrup. Because then they got to boil it and get the excess water out, get it down to just the sap, right? So when you're having your breakfast, and you're going like, oh, my corn pops are popping, right? And your pancakes are going, where's my syrup? I want some pop too, right? So it's pretty crazy because Mother Nature's got this stuff all figured out. We just get to use it, right? So pretty cool. So that's really the cycle of a hard maple tree. And in general, a hard maple tree lasts 60 to 80 years is its growth cycle where it's commercially viable. If you don't harvest that tree by the time it's 100 and 120 years old, you know what's going to happen?
So much wear and tear, it just becomes brittle.
It's going to become brittle. It's going to go to waste. It's going to die. Okay, so hard maple trees are not like the great sequoias where they're 2,000-year-old trees. They don't make it much past 100 years. So is it smarter to take that wood and cut it down and make a skateboard out of it and use it wisely, or let it go to waste in the forest? What do you think?
I think that there's many skaters around the world that would agree it is better to put that wood to use.
That's right.
I'd rather use it.
My question for you, though, do the same principles apply if you left the skateboard out for 100 years? Would it deteriorate and die just like the real tree?
Well, the wood is protected by paint and sealer. There's layers of glue in there, so it's not going to break down as easy as a natural piece of wood. Now, leaving it inside, it's going to last forever, but outside, the sun degrades things, right? Organic materials. So what happens with wood is it stores carbon in it. As it's a solid material, it's holding carbon. If it's rotting away, it's releasing carbon.
I'm following. This is the first educational instruction I've had in many years, and I'm doing well. Going for an A+ today.
So let's get into seeing if you guys understand how to break things, okay? So hold this card here. Let me explain this to you first. You see, every piece of wood's different. It's got grain in it. You see it in your board, right? So do you think that grain is going around in circles, up and down, sideways in a tree? How do you think that works? Any idea? Right. It's going like that? You think so? Well, the tree is growing and each layer grows outside of that, so it doesn't shed it. Those tubes that carry that liquid and that fluid, they're going up and down, right? So imagine there's a big windstorm blowing right now and the tree is really strong, right? If I turn my wood this way and I have a windstorm, all the trees fall over. So now I want you guys to break that perfectly on the line. See if you can break it perfectly on the line or not. See if that's even possible. Good. Okay, it's close to the line. Now let's see how you do over here. Okay, now take your pieces and see if you can match them up. See if they match at all. They didn't break on the line and they're not straight, right? What? Because trees are like people. There aren't two the same. So they're never going to be perfectly the same, right? Just a little bit different.
Always.
Always.
We don't have control.
We don't have control. Mother Nature made it. She ran those tubes, and when the grain of that tree decides to grow a little crooked, it goes a little crooked, right? You know, the way a skateboard's processed, on average, we'll get 3 to 5 different trees will be in a board, just by the nature of how they cut and process. But we use averaging because instead of having 7 pieces from one log, we got it spread across, right? Your arms, his body, you know, his feet, you know, their head, you know. It's mix mash, right? Little Frankenstein, right?
So it really is taking kind of like the best pieces to fit each other.
Right, but what happens is it creates an average, because then when we glue it together, the glue in there strengthens it and joins it all together, right? So you see a board delam and it truly is a straight line. It's like, oh, that didn't work very good, right? So it's really important that a skateboard gets glued right. So the glue that we glue a skateboard with is polyvinyl glue. So here's some glue I bought over at Home Depot, okay? And I'm gonna leave you guys this little mold so you can press some little crazy tiny Braille boards and you guys can try to cut them out and make them work, right? So in my school program, kids will press this little board. The school doesn't have the infrastructure to press a board, right? But they do have a C-clamp and some glue and they can do this. So if you guys do a good job of paint roller and some glue on there, I brought a paint roller for you, glue it together, clamp it together, let it cure and dry. If you do a good job of it, I'd let it sit for a week. you'd be able to rip that thing. Now, I brought you a truck hole pad. The trucks are gonna be a little close together on this one.
This is absolutely amazing.
But this is the way a skateboard's laminated. So in the factory, we have big presses, it's a full-size mold, big hydraulic cylinders and all that. But this is just illustrating the example. So you see how flexible this is. It's pieces of veneer, right? It's a single piece. As soon as the glue dries with the cross grain, so we see here how some of the grain is going across and some is going long, right?
Yeah, I do see that.
So we see the way that strength goes. So we saw how easy the wood breaks with the grain, how hard it does without, right? But we'll see in our experiments the truth of what happens when we build some 7-plies wrong instead of right. So in the world of eco, people want to say, don't use trees, that you're wrecking the trees, right? We have more hardwood growth in North America than we had 100 years ago. It's about how you manage it and use it wisely with sustainable forestry and things like that. People are always really curious how we get veneer out of a tree. Is it, you know, it's round, right? It's how do you get that out of it? So if you imagine this was a log right now, okay, come grab this from me. And then there's a lot of power on a lathe and a knife, we just get a big sheet of veneer. It just unravels it. The knife and the pressure of the lathe is so hard. Now the log's been soaked in a vat of water, it's been warmed, it's been conditioned for the process, right? But that's how it happens. Now in that there will be some knot holes and some cracks, and you gotta cut around them and work around them to make it work, you know? But the reality is hard maple's not going away. It's part of the North American species, and the only place in the world good hard maple grows is in North America. There's some soft maple in northern China and in Russia, but not hard maple, because without the Great Lakes region where they have those lakes and the freezingness, you got to have that gnarly freezingness to make it work. If we take a little sapling for a maple tree and we grow it here, you can get it to grow in your backyard. You know what happens to a tree when you grow it in your backyard? It becomes short and stout. In the forest, the trees are tall and skinny because the leaves are like, sunlight, I need my sunlight, give me some energy. And that's part of that capillary action. I'll bring some water up here if you give me some energy. So the tree, the leaf is traded with the sun. You come warm me up, we need some water, I'm thirsty. Comes up the tubes, right? So here's the info packet for Create a Skate. Create a Skate's an education program where kids get to make skateboards at school, and you learn about the relevance of math, science, ecology, biology, physics, engineering, artistry, because you can't have a skateboard if all that doesn't collide together, right? Pretty cool. So I was wondering who is ready for their 20 pages of skateboard homework. School's getting ready to start here. You know, what do you think? Can you answer some of this? Oh, we got the lamination example right here. So here, let's check this out. Oh, he picks up the teacher's manual and gives you the student guide. Well, no, why don't you see if you can come up the example of a common denominator of the long grain of a skateboard. So people get confused in skateboarding. There's this whole discussion going on. My wheels are in millimeters. Some trucks are in millimeters. Some are in inches. Some are axle length. Some are hanger length. Boards are in inches, but some brands mention it in fractions. Some mention it in tenths. Some do metric, decimal. It's confusing, right? It's all math, though. If you understand it, you can break it all together. So this exercise lets you break it together. So we see the two long grains here. Usually the answer for what you want in life is around you if you just pay attention. You go like, oh, that's a long grain, it's 0.62, okay. And I'll check the other chart and go, oh, that's the same thing here. And add it together. So look at the teacher's guide here. Fractions are confusing, especially when it takes 19/48 to get a common to get the thickness of your skateboard. Man, my board is badass. It's 19/48 thick. Imagine that. Millimeters ain't confusing at all. That's confusing, right? But then if we look over here to the decimal, well, this board is 0.3957 thick. Totally understandable. This chart doesn't have a metric equivalent on it, but there is a metric equivalent. It's easy with math to convert things, right? It's really easy to convert things with one of these, right? Let's just get the truth out, right? And if you don't like math or tech, then just take this and throw it away, okay?
0.3957 inches to millimeters.
The answer is 10.05 millimeters.
2020, baby.
That's right. See, this math is getting easier every day. You just got to talk it out loud, right? So I think we should get you guys to ride some skateboards. See, we got a couple boards put together here. I think, don't let them see. I'm guarding it. I don't want them to see what they're going to do here. This one's going to be really interesting. So I want you to give this a try and see what you think. I'm curious how much pop this board has. So they're all the same shape and the same mold. However, the surface may look different because the laminations are different. And when we make a board and we press it in a mold and we open the mold up, it relaxes. Goes, you know what I mean? Like a little bit of release, right? And based on the grain location and where the tubes are, it's all part of that.
About all of these boards should feel different.
Each one of these boards is going to feel different. So right now, don't try to break this. Try to not break it. But do a trick, yeah. No, it is heavier. It is heavier. You identified one of the characteristics. That's the idea here. We're trying to identify the characteristics. What's plausible and what's not, right?
Less dense. It's like, I feel like the...
It's hard maple.
You know, I can't tell if I'm like in my head right now or if I'm right, but it feels like it's less responsive.
And I would think it'd be more responsive. I've never made a skateboard like this ever in my life, by the way, just to be clear. Part of me wants to think it's going to be more responsive. Part of me wants to think it's not going to be more responsive. And it's definitely not going to land a big 10, 20 stair and ride away. So you're analyzing that thing. What do you think? From what we talked about, what do you think's going on with this board?
To me, I think the grain is straight on the top and bottom, but all the middle plies are the other way.
Well, the grain of a regular skateboard is always that way on the top and the bottom, right? Literally, I made a stack with 4 skateboards. One's normal and 3 are odd. Made it the exact same time, all together. Exact same shape. I like hearing it in this warehouse. I'm in an environment where you can hear things tick like that. It's so cool. Okay, so we can come back to this one because we need to be heavy-footed to prove this one out. Let's see how light-footed we can get. Okay, so first of all, don't look at the board, just grab it. It's a lot thinner. So this is a keep your feet a little light board as well. Still try not to break it. We're going to break them at the end, but let's try not to break it.
7 plies. What? They're all the same. They're just...
Well, they're different 7 plies. They're not the same.
Oh!
Not all things are created equal, even though people say.
Look at that tail.
Oh my.
It's like
Breaking if we do a kickflip?
I don't even know if it can survive a kickflip. I'm curious to find out. You guys are so good at riding things light-footed.
I don't think it is.
Oh, it's cracking, but you did it.
Hearing that, I'm breaking this thing if I do a flip trick.
You're not as light-footed?
I got the hard stomp. Really, there's like an 85% chance I'm breaking this if I do a trick right now.
I'm okay if it breaks. It's part of the learning opportunity. If you're not willing to try, what are you going to learn, right?
Hey, that was actually...
Counts.
Good job.
It's almost like it's very breakable, but there's something about the bouncy physics that it makes me feel like I pop higher.
Well, your own perception is your own reality, you know, until proven otherwise. Sure. We will get to proving it otherwise soon enough.
Oh.
Now there, you caught it. Oh, it's the same shape. It was cut on the same machine at the same time. They were sitting on top of each other. Imagine these boards were like kittens cuddling, and I put them on the machine, cut them all at once. But because the material is all hard maple, but it's a different orientation, when I opened the mold, it relaxed a little different. Now this is the super light-footed board. So look how thin that is.
Great.
Look at how it's all bellied out.
Yeah, this guy's
So the wood,
caving in.
it came in the same mold, but there's not enough material there to hold its place. Oh! What'd you do? You already broke it. You didn't even give him a chance.
Look at the shape on it.
That's pretty much what I expected to happen. Again, I've never made a skateboard like this. I never knew anybody that wanted a skateboard that looked like what's on this wall over here. That wanted to challenge convention, you know? And I like to challenge things. So what you learned in class, what do you think is going on here? It's 7-ply. What's going on?
Every single ply is going the wrong way.
Yeah. So every ply is going one way.
I'm telling the way it broke.
Yeah.
There's no fibers that are sharp
broke
this way.
just-
All the tubes are going this way, right? All the tubes are going this way.
I see a board break more uniform than this right here.
Well, you might if that. We'll see what happens with that first one. So, as I talked about tubes, I should have left this cardboard tube round, right? But what's happening there is all the tubes in the wood are going across, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing holding that together is grip tape. I mean, there was grip tape holding it together. So I've never done this before. Broke a board that easy, but. How many pieces can we break it into? That's the real question, right? Oh yeah, Karate Kid.
Do it.
Did I break it? No, I didn't. Wait, I broke it at the truck?
You know why I broke at the truck, right? Energy always takes the path of least resistance.
That was worth it for the clip.
Made in the same mold at the same time, a real 7-ply. And after riding boards of hesitancy, there is no hesitancy involved here because you can hear it, right? You can hear the way it taps. It sounds totally different. All 3 of those boards didn't sound right. It's highly engineered. 80% of the tubes are going the length and 20% of the width. You know what trick in skateboarding made us change the way the grain orientation of the wood was? Puts the most stress on a board. It's the basis of every trick.
Ollie?
Yeah, the ollie. You know who told me what product to make for my first product as a kid back in 1978? Ollie. So Alan Gilpin was at my skate park. Him and Mike McGill went to the store. He goes, rails slid, it'd be cool, because it was so long ago that rails were grab rails and they were made of wood or urethane. So imagine a urethane is what your wheels are made of. If your rail was made of urethane and you rock and rolled, it would grip. So Alan said, I don't want to grip, I want to slip. And back then, boards had no concave, they were flat. So the surface tension that goes to slide a board, because there was no curves in it, was huge, right? So I made plastic rails. That was my first product. I literally made rails for 5 years before I ever made boards, or ever sold boards. I made boards, they just weren't very good yet until I figured it out. And then my whole career, I've been chasing making a skateboard better because of the trick he invented. Pretty cool.
So the middle ply is like this one, then the two on the outside are
so this is
sideways.
all natural. There's no dyed veneer in here. So we see a long grain, a long grain. You see how these two are dark and they're thinner, right? So the cross bands are thinner and they go across. And then the ones this way are long grain. If I look this way, see I get the opposite effect, because here I'm looking at the edge of the tubes of 5 layers and the tube sticking up a 2. Here I'm looking at the tube sticking up a 5. Does that make sense? So it's all about those tubes. So for instance, like I talked about earlier, that if you had your grind rail here solid metal, your mind would go, well, it'd be twice as heavy, but it will bend. Because a solid one, when it goes like this and it goes down, it's just gonna stay, right? Where this one's gonna flex and come back because it's a tube. Tubes are stronger than solids, and they're lighter too. So as I talked a little bit earlier about nanotubes and like composites and airplanes, so in the world of high-tech manufacturing, the last 15, 20 years has been big on nanotubes, and that's man mimicking nature. Only man had to reprocess nature into other things and spend the money and the man hours and the energy to do that. We got Mother Nature's hard maple. That grain was in the tree. If we look at our wheels, you can go, well, wheels are pretty much oil-based with urethanes get made with petroleum, right? That petroleum did come out of the ground. It looks nothing like it did coming out of the ground, right? And then the trucks made out of metals, they came out of the ground, but they got converted into something else where the grain and the wood is still the same grain. I have seen some wheels made with corn oil and things like that. It has happened. I haven't tested them enough to see. I saw Danny Way go 72 miles an hour or something on one. And then when we're on our way home from doing the gig, the guy calls me, or we're talking in the truck with the wheel guy, and he goes, yeah, I didn't tell you guys, those were corn oil wheels. Danny Way is all eco, so I called Danny up. He's like, no way! He was so stoked. And it's the one that's technically thicker of the 3.
Oh.
So what do you think that one is now from all the discussion we've had?
So from what I can assume, it's just all the plies that direction.
It's all long grain. So when I cut these out, one of the boards broke in the shaper machine because the cutter's going, and the cutter just broke the board off. It was crazy. And I'd never seen that happen. I would never make a board like this, but then again, nobody would ever make a board like that either, right? So I'm curious to see if you jump down those 5 stairs, 6 stairs over there. So be clear that it's not going to break in like anything's normally broken. It's going to break abnormally. The solidness of energy support this way is more than normal, right? We got more strength this way. The problem is this way. So if you land a trick and your feet aren't even and your weight's like the halfway point like that, like if you end that off the 5 stair like that, it'll probably break the side off. And it would break it based on the truck holes, just the way he chopped it, right? Path of least resistance, where energy's going to battle. Well, oh, it's more resistant right here, okay. It's gonna be hard to break because it's thicker, so it has more mass, right? It's definitely not gonna break as easy as the cross-grain board, right?
This is the tank board right here. This thing is a unit.
So here's something I'm curious to check on that. So I always check a board, I'll turn it upside down, and yeah, this way I can barely get it to touch the ground, and I'm a big heavy dude, right? Because all those layers are holding it that way. However, the concave will fall out of it because there's no cross grains holding it. If you think you can stomp this and break this, I'm curious to see.
If we had Uzi, I'd say maybe. I'm having heart failure.
You feel those tubes pushing back at you?
That just knocked my whole shin guard off my leg.
Even over a curb, but like my normal way of breaking a board testing my whole life is I'll grab a board, go to a parking curb and set it on there and just, I won't even try that with that. And most boards I can stomp them like that and break them. Now that's not the energy you give them with an ollie. It's a different test, right? So just for comparison, look at the 7-ply in that same context, right? The regular one. So scientifically, do the same thing with this one. So you got a lot more response. It bounces a lot further down. But the right viewpoint of a board is it wants to have a give. And it's a give and give back, because when you go to do an ollie and you crank your energy down and it gives back, you're like, I'm in there. Well, this one hasn't died yet, so let's kill this one. So we never got to the full understanding of what this one is, but in the parody of it all, yeah, see if you think you know what it is. It's 7 plies.
Yeah, it looks like it's just alternating.
There's 2 plies going longitudinal and 5 plies going crossed on that board. So it has something to make it not fragile like that one was, right? Where that multi-piece board is over there, pile of parts.
Opposite of a regular board almost.
Right, right. It's exactly opposite, right. So a regular board has 5 layers going long and 2 layers crossed. This one has 5 crossed, 2 long.
Ah, that's why it feels
So it's a swap. But without even putting all your energy on it, just lightly take your foot and see how well that flexes.
All because the plies goes up.
You wouldn't think that this made a difference at all.
Well, what happens is the skateboard's very refined. People don't really know it because they don't know the steps that it went through to get that highly refined, right?
So like a Walmart board, for example, that's more just the cheap quality of wood.
Usually a Walmart board is mystery wood, you know, because it's selling for 30 bucks or less. They don't even know what it is. It's like whatever was cheap and available, right? So that would break, not quite as bad as that, but pretty close. Even when you take it and give it a proper orientation. There are some boards in Walmart that sell for more money that say hard maple on them. Whether they are hard maple or someone says they're hard maple, that's a whole nother thing. Like you see all the time on boards, you'll see like a Canadian sticker. Canadian hard rock maple, right? Have you done the audit trail to confirm that came from the Canada side of the Great Lakes or the USA side? First of all, I don't really care. What I care about is it came from the Great Lakes, right? Makes the maple the good stuff. So sometimes you'll see stuff in stores and it will have a Canadian flag. That's quite often the manufacturing lie. Is there any substance behind it? For me, all the boards I build have a PS Stix serial number on them because I'm proud that I made them, right? Nobody else in the world sort of says that. They're just sort of like, oh, we made this, yeah, whatever, you know. We're not really proud of it.
You're proud about your craft.
You know, you guys can keep on the experiment and playing along, right? So this one is another one that's got the 2 crosses in it, but the 2 long grains in it with the crosses. And this one I think was laminated wrong. I had a hard time when I went to make these because my staff looked at me and they go, it's not right. And I trained them to do everything right. And I'm like, just feed it to the glue machine this way, guys. Promise, I'm trying to learn something here. Right, so this is somewhere in between it all. That one might be great, who knows?
This is super light.
Judging that, I always do this. So this is right. This is a board where at my weight, I can bounce, but feel how fast it pops back at me. It's the give and give back, right? Give and give back.
Forget the trucks. The trucks are terrible, but the board feels amazing. Oh, this board feels the best out of all of them so far.
Jump down the stairs.
Legend.
That's hard maple you broke there. Woo! It was wrong maple. 7 plies of wrong hard maple there. Go ahead. No, just
You guys want to launch it at a wall.
We gotta do our special experiment. What do you think's gonna happen in the comments below? Do you think it's gonna chip upward or just get destroyed?
That is exactly what I wanted to happen.
Look
That's
at that.
pretty
I never
interesting.
even broke a board right there. Me neither.
I've rammed lots of boards in the walls, but usually it's because I'm testing other materials, right? I was like, you're going for the straight wall, and I was like, if it was me, I'd be going for that corner right there.
Ah. Oh, I missed it.
The angle of momentum hit the wall, bounced off. Like a car going down the freeway hitting the side rail, right? Wow.
Wow, a difference in size.
But I wouldn't have suspected it. There's nothing going on around here. What are you guys talking about? Here, watch this. There's nothing going on around here.
Oh God! Let me see.
So these don't have a top print on them. I grabbed them off the production line on Saturday when I was at the factory because I thought you guys might like to see something.
Bro, this shape, 835?
8 1/4. Those will be painted white in production. They didn't have the white paint on them yet.
Woo!
It'll be white on the bottom.
Bro, this shape is amazing. This is like, this is good.
Show me that one, Glow.
Oh, it's about to get crazy with
Seeing this in person is the most surreal thing I think I've ever seen.
Because you saw it on the computer, it wasn't really real in the computer,
I
right?
designed this one.
It's just like a video, it's stuck in the computer till you actually get it out.
I need to skate this, honestly. Like, this is a must skate it board.
So these boards, you're not going to have any of these crazy problems. None of this stuff is going on with the Braille boards, right? This is just, we're trying to learn and show why they're so good, right? You know, why is because we do it right. Yeah, so even looking at the edges, I made these natural on purpose to make them all look the same and fool the eye. Here you got colors, right? And you can sort of see like, oh, I see the dyed veneer and the beauty of that. So a lot of people are really curious about dyed veneer. There's some people are like, I don't like red. Some people say I don't like yellow. Some people even say I don't like purple. So some people are concerned that dyed veneer makes a difference to the board, right? So the way the dyed veneer works, and it's sort of like food dye. It's a water-based dye and it solvates through the wood. Now the wood is put in an autoclave. That's basically, think about grandma cooking in the kitchen with a pressure cooker, creating pressure, right? So that's what happens. And in an autoclave, you'll have vacuum and you'll have pressure, and that will drive the dye and the water to the fibers of the wood, then they dry the wood back out. And that's how we get the colors. So with the skateboard, when you look at a piece of furniture that's been dyed, the residue of the dye is on the outside and the grain is really subdued, right? But with skateboards, the grain is always like, look, there's the grain. Because we take the veneer and sand the residue off the top before we make it plywood. And that's why every board's unique, right? You look at the wood grain and it's not the same. They're all unique and special and different.
Wow. This shape, people, it's gonna change the game.
Because I can't skate yellow top ply.
No?
Why?
Cannot.
It's in your mind.
It's in my mind.
I can't skate a wrong 7-ply, neither can you, right? Well, you did skate them a little bit. I applaud you for the willingness to try. If you're not willing to try anything, you'll never find out. Nothing changes without the willingness to try. I love the willingness to try that wall over there. Look at it, all that rad stuff. How'd that chain board work out? Talk about chinners, huh? Right, so at PS Stix, we just don't make boards for anybody. I've been making skateboards my whole life, and I like to make boards for people that inspire people. And that's the cool thing about Braille. It inspires kids to learn, to progress in their skateboarding, to have fun, get a little wacky, not be too concerned about landing the newest trick, but about having fun doing it, right? Because skateboarding is all about fun. And that's what Braille House is all about. Look at this place, it's fun all over the place.
No, it's gonna be fun.
Exactly, a whole lot of fun. And they'll have a little top logo on them, but as I said, I grabbed them off the production line before they did that on Saturday. I was like, I gotta take some of these with me.
Yeah.
I'm going north.
You guys can't feel them in person, obviously,
But when
because you're watching a YouTube video, but I mean, just kind of compared to how other people make their skateboards.
Just this, it's that. Give and give back. Yeah. And a good skateboard has to give and give back. Now I'm applying energy to it totally opposite of how you ollie, but for me, I'm calibrated standing on boards my whole life this way. That's how I judge it. Because I want it to have enough resistance to give and give back.
I can't wait to skate this.
Well, I'll get you some consistent boards, but don't stop riding the wacky inconsistent stuff, right? Okay? Don't get too stuck on the like, I'm Nigel and I gotta win the Olympics and my stuff's locked, okay? I build that stuff too, but you know.
I don't want to stop looking at them.
I just want to put it on, honestly.
There were only 2 on the production line that I could grab. The other 2 were still in sanding the day when I left the factory. But there's 4 graphics all together. I know a lot of people made a plan to get these boards and they thought they were coming a month ago or a month and a half ago. This COVID thing's rocked manufacturing, my factory, you know. 2 split shifts, split breaks. We're doing everything we can to make skateboards. In the world of COVID, people aren't out there kicking balls, they're actually out riding skateboards in the neighborhoods. It's pretty cool, huh? So I appreciate you guys being patient. The boards are shipping up here this week. I'm sure Braille will get them out to you as quick as they can.
As soon as they're ready, you guys are gonna get them, and I promise you, you are gonna want to get your hands on these. These are literally the best of the best. You will not find a skateboard that is better than this skateboard right here. They happen to be ours, all right? Isn't that amazing?
Thank God I didn't buy a board.
Did you guys ride the samples I sent up a couple months ago? So, and one of those specifically was what Aaron rode as a kid in his Habitat days, you know, and he rode for Habitat, early 2000s or something, you know, and he's like, well, I rode this one. I looked up on the computer and I'm like, oh, this, that, you know, and he's like, yeah. It's like, that's what we built, you know? Because to me, this number, anything that I built since about 2002 has that number on it. And the PS number is the way we control the quality in the factory and we control everything that's going on. So if you look at it, the first 5 digits are like a batch number, and the last 4 digits are the board within the batch. 53rd board, yeah. Yeah, but what about 01? Where's 01?
All right, you guys, well, we are gonna get these skateboards out to you as soon as we possibly can. So for those of you guys who already pre-ordered them, They are coming very soon, and they got the Glow Father approval right here.
Woo!
That's
This
right.
is instantly getting set up.
That is right. So a huge thanks to our man right here, the Professor. I love that
The
nickname.
professors of professors.
The Professor has blessed us today, and he is making our Braille skateboards, and we are so extremely happy to be working with you, and we really appreciate you coming
No
here
problem.
to give us this demonstration. And
Stoked to be here. I've seen all the crazy wackiness, willing to challenge it, things that have gone on here, and I'm such a believer in the willingness to try. And that's what this place is all about, the willingness to try and inspire others to try, right? You know, so the willingness to inspire, I totally applaud the Braille crew for making that happen. So if you want to guys check out what I'm doing at my factory and my workshop, check me out on Instagram at Professor Schmitt. If you Google me on YouTube, you'll find a bunch of stuff. I got a page, but I haven't done a really good job of tying it together, you know, but might be really cool if you wanted to see somebody ride a skateboard that was made out of cardboard, and he did a McTwist over my head across the 8-foot wide channel of his personal ramp. Go check it out. Or if you want to learn how Ollie higher, check out Ollie Higher with Professor Schmitt and Spencer Newsy. Yeah, Spencer. Spencer just got married. Happy marriage, Spencer.
there are some videos right there. Go ahead and check them out. Subscribe, like, leave a comment below. And if you go to brailleskateboarding.com, you're going to see these very soon. You can get everything you need to learn how to skateboard. And if you haven't started skating yet, now is the time. It is the best time ever right now to learn how to skateboard. And we have everything you need at brailleskateboarding.com. See you next time.